You got John McMullen and Jody McDonald, Mac and Mac, First 365 on the day after the full schedule release and the first chance to meet the Eagle coordinators. Johnny, I just want to jump back into the schedule for a second, but I do want to ask you some more questions about both Sean Desai and Brian Johnson as well. 5 primetime games. Did I count them up right? That
yeah,
and I think
5.
you said
I thought
yesterday
they'd leave it open, one for flexing purposes. So I got that one right. The rare.
you did hit that nail right on the head. And if I were a betting man, I would not be surprised if they get flexed in onto one of those games. The only thing that may keep that from happening is they do have a couple of they've got all primetime game. They got a couple of 425s, which means
A lot of
probably the national game, and Fox is going to put their foot down and go, no, you're not taking that one. So they may or may not get that 6th primetime game. But your wishes for Sunday at 1, not too plentiful, my man.
It tells you, by the way, there are 3 1:00 games.
Both 3 games out of 17.
Yeah, both games
out of Washington. Not a big percentage.
Both teams against both games against Washington, terrible team projected. In Arizona, terrible team projected. That's it. Everything else, and you mentioned, and look at Buffalo, San Francisco, back-to-back 425s, not prime time. A CBS for Buffalo, Fox for San Francisco. Those are 2 games that they wanted, and they got those.
They will not be flexed into a night position on Sunday night or Monday night. At least the report is that ESPN can't do it till late in the season. Those games would be early enough, I think, that they would be untouchable anyway. Yes. As you joked yesterday, the disrespect card will be played by someone somewhere because they feel the need to always play it. There's no way you can look at this and say the Eagles were disrespected. No. They are being given their props as the NFC champions, Super Bowl participant last year. And I think all the networks want some piece of the Philadelphia Eagles over the course of the season. And that's shown by the placement of the games, the 5 primetime games, and the plethora of late afternoon games that these are going to be considered quote unquote national games.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And you've heard it for years, Jody. I mean, on the air, the disrespect, everything. The Eagles,
the Eagles have been disrespected, deservedly so, when they haven't been good. If they don't look like a good team, they're going to get
I mean, that rolls overall, but and the Eagles send out their stuff, and they've appeared in the second most primetime games, 99 in this century. The only team that has played in more primetime games is obviously the Dallas Cowboys. Now people are going, they're disrespected. No, Dallas is Dallas. Put Dallas aside. Nobody's been in primetime more than the Philadelphia Eagles. The NFL loves this team. If anything, start looking at the other teams. They're complaining. Like I said, Minnesota week 2. You got to come open up in Philadelphia 2 consecutive years. I guarantee you they got a call over that, the league office. There's plenty of teams. Last year, the Eagles had a better case of being disrespected, to be honest, because they had like 4 games on a short week, which was, it's not disrespect. It's just, it's tough. And they don't have anything like that this year. The league loves this team. That's my only point.
And I agree with your point wholeheartedly. The immediate, nobody likes Philadelphia. Everybody hates Philadelphia, and we don't care. Oh, except that we do care because we then want to bitch afterwards that we're being disrespected. If we really didn't care, we wouldn't say anything. We'd laugh. We'd smile and say, here's what you can do with your way you're handling it. No. We care at times too much. All right, so we did run down the schedule, Larry. For those who just streamed in, both John and I have the Eagles getting off to a pretty quick start. John has them winning their first 5 and then losing to the Jets. I have them winning their first 6, but then losing to the Dolphins thereafter. are the comps going to start immediately last year to this year? And they should. I get it. Same coach, same quarterback, 4/5 of the offensive line. There's a lot of things that'll tie last year's team to this year's team, and it should. There are roster changes, but not major roster changes. Are we going to start the conversation about 17-0 again, or can you?
I'm sure it'll start. I'm sure it'll start pretty quickly because
There.
that first 5 games looks pretty easy, to be honest. Now, much like I said last year with Detroit, I'm going to say New England's probably a little bit tougher than it might look on paper, just because it's a season opener, home opener, and those are always a little bit more difficult. But I think ultimately the Eagles find a way, out-talent them, get out of there with a win. I'll throw it back at you, Jody. How disappointed before that Jets game? So I have them losing, as you mentioned, October 15th. You have them losing for the first time October 22nd. How disappointed would you be if they lost one of those games, Minnesota at Tampa Bay, Washington at the Rams?
Yeah, pretty disappointed.
Yeah,
They
same
will
here.
be, and again, point spreads are not the be all end all. We see that happens all the time, that upsets come down in any sporting event that you have. So it isn't a lock as soon as quote unquote Vegas. And when I say Vegas is everywhere now these days because of legalized sports gambling in so many states across our country. If it were just that easy, let Vegas make the line and then decide, they're going to win. Oh, they're going to win. They're going to lose. They're going to lose. It doesn't necessarily go that way, but it's a pretty damn good indicator of the way the games are going to go. Not 100%, but a good indicator just the same. Eagles, Patriots, they'll be favored by more than a field goal, even on the road. Washington will probably be at least a touchdown, if not more than that. Tampa will be on the north side of 5 would be my general guess. I don't think they'll make them more than a touchdown field goal favorite on the road. But then again, if the Eagles are 2-0 and Tampa's 0-2, I didn't look up. I didn't look up Tampa's first 2 games. But if it's 2-0 against 0-2, it could be 7.5 on the road against Tampa. Home against Washington, guaranteeing you that there'll be a double-digit fave, a more than a touchdown fave. And against the Rams, it's going to be at least a field goal. There won't even be a game out of those 5 where it'll be less than a 3-point line. They're going to be favored by more than a field goal in all of them.
Well, they already put out the opening lines. It was 3.5 in New England, some places, and I'm sure it'll blocks. And that was, to tell you the truth, a little bit light because of New England's reputation, history, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, and that, see, to me, like they're going to be 5-0, and it's going to fuel those expectations even higher. And I think a lot of people aren't going to recognize, well, this is the soft part of the schedule, and tougher days are coming. And certainly post-bye are those tougher days. That's when they really ramp up. But even before pre-buys, November 5th, Dallas at home, that's a tough game. Again, I'm going to go home and home split, but that's a tough game. So that stretch from November 5th through Seattle, December 17th, that will tell you what this team is. And I think the positive part of the way the schedule is laid out, they get to gain confidence as they're going through the growing pains, because they're going to be able to beat some of those early teams, even making some mistakes that they probably wouldn't be able to make later in the season.
And I think people who wrote it down, printed it out, have it in front of them on their computer screen or their phone or whatever else, when they're going through the schedule, they realize, hey, nice, easy, early schedule, but we've got a gauntlet to run in the mid to back end of the schedule, and then it lightens up. Oh, they know it today. But when they get out 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, people will forget that the big part of the schedule is yet to come. They'll just be basking in the glow of we're undefeated again, just like we were last year. It's general fan reaction. That's natural for people to do. You stay in the moment. The only thing when you're playing the game, the only thing that you think of is at most the game you got next week. And a lot of times that doesn't happen until this week game ends. And then they focus on next week's game. But people aren't looking today, people are looking through 17 weeks. Everybody's looking at the entire schedule. Here's where we can win. Here's where we can, oh, this is tough. We can cakewalk there. Yeah, everybody has a schedule in their head and they're looking at it en masse. When you get into the actual season, it's borderline week to week. It's 2 weeks.
By the way, we haven't done the exercise, and I like this, so I give you credit. The exercise of how you feel if you're forced to go one up or one down, how you feel about the team. I'm at 12-5. You're at 13-4. Now, last year, I remember, I think we were both at 11 at the start, and I went down. You went up.
Yeah, I went up.
You were obviously correct.
We were both short because that only got me to 12 and they won 14 games.
Nobody thought the Eagles were going to be as good as it, or they're lying, one or the other. This year, I'm at 12-5, but if forced, I'd go up. You're at 13-4. Are you going up?
Yeah.
Or are you going down?
If I had to move off that number, yeah, I don't.
That's tough.
It really is tough.
Yeah.
I don't think they're winning. I'm really locked into my 13-4 number. Do I think they're going to win 14? No. Do I think they're going to win as few as 12? No. I really like my 13, but I got to move one way or the other.
I'm forcing you. That's the point of it. That's the point of the exercise.
If you force me, I would go up to 14.
Wow.
I would more so say up
14-14. Back to back
14 years. And there's no question. Anyone who says this year's schedule is the same or easier than last year, come on, stop it. You're not paying attention. The way that it played out. And it'll happen, the same thing will happen this year that happened last year. The schedule for me looked tougher prior to the season than the way it played out. You go back and see what the teams were, not only in their games against the Eagles, but all of their other games. It really wasn't a hard schedule last year. They really did have an easy schedule and took advantage of it, went 14-3. As we sit here today, as many teams as they're playing that made the playoffs, grabbing a really tough division, AFC East as your opponent across. And, oh, by the way, the one other game you get, game 17, is the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champion, the team that beat you in the Super Bowl. You can't draw a tougher schedule than that.
Yeah, but if you're good, with Kansas City being a perfect example, if you're good, you're good. And, you're going to play a first-place schedule. The minute you're in first place and the season ends, you're going to play a first-place schedule, which doesn't mean as much as it used to because it's even a little bit more structured. But when you're having that extra game, you're going to play a first-place team. So it's first place against first place. And that's part of it. But good teams are good teams, and they're going to win games no matter what the schedule is. And I do think the Eagles are a very good team. But, it's interesting. If you flip this schedule and you had that group of games, Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle, even throw the Giants, and that was the first 6 weeks. We talked about Kansas City. Everybody was saying for weeks, is the season going to open at Kansas City? And then Mama Kelsey, week 2. It was supposed to be early. If you had that at the start of the season, then I think you're in a 2-3, 3-2 mode, coming off a 14-win season. I think that's underrated, Jody, because I think people start getting antsy at that point because the expectations are so high. That's why I love the setup of the schedule. They have the bad teams at the start. They're not bad. Minnesota's not a bad team, but
they're the lesser team.
Yeah. At the start of the season, I think it lets it allows them to get their footing. I think it's a really big break, to be honest.
And a key game, and you and I disagreed on this one because we acknowledge Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, 2 of the 4 on the road, really tough. And then at Seattle. And Seattle made the playoffs this past year. They were the 12th man is one of the toughest places to play in the National Football League when they're good. And they were good last year. They weren't great. They made the playoffs, got bounced in the first round, but they were good. Can they do that again with Geno Smith? Is he going to be a one-year wonder, or has he really found his footing in the National Football League in year 8 of his career, year 9 of his career? I don't know about that. That's the key game. That will help. You said that that run will dictate it, and we kind of put the 4 together, but then you add that 5th, Seattle. If they go 2-2 in that 4-game section, John, which I think is fair, unless you're either an equal acolyte and you got the shades on and you're saying, oh, we're going to beat them all 4-0 and nobody can beat us. Or if you're a Negadelphia guy, so that's where the season ends. They're going in the tank. 2-2. They come out of that 2-2. They've got Seattle that next week. That really is a key game. You said earlier, well, they're going to take advantage of a very easy early schedule, but we'll find out what they are after that run. Oh, I think we'll find out with the Seattle. If they go 2-2 in that run there, and then they turn around and lose to Seattle, I think we'll have nervousness here in Philadelphia. I think.
Yeah, and that's what I have happening. I have them going 2-3 over that stretch and losing in Seattle before righting the ship on Christmas, and then you get the breather with Arizona. Yeah, probably. I mean, there'll be some concerns, but that's I'm with you. And Xander, we did a scheduled show last night here on JAKIB Sports, the YouTube page, and I mentioned it last night, and Xander brought up, well, let's see Geno do it again, which is fair. It's very fair. There's been more bad football from Geno Smith than good football. But, I think they're a good team. I think they're a better team than people realize. And I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's going to be a superstar. I think he'll be fine at quarterback. But I just hate the spot. I just hate the spot of going. We know teams have had so much struggle, West Coast teams coming east and vice versa, to begin with. The body clock game, the so-called body clock games. But again, it's the second game on the road, and the game before it's second consecutive game. And the game before is at Dallas, it's Dallas week. Now, Nick Sirianni is smartened up to the point. He's not going to wear the Beat Dallas t-shirt. He's not going to try to make something more of it than you should. He's learned from that. But it's still, people get juiced up for that more than, all right, Seattle's not in our division. Yeah, it's in the conference, but not in the division. It doesn't have as much oomph. I think there's a natural letdown to that effect, and it's a really difficult place to play. I just hate the spot. I hate the spot, and that's why I think the Eagles are going to probably slip up in that game.
And if you think they're going to lose 3 out of 5 in that stretch, you would go, man, is there enough time on the back end to get it back in motion, to get back on a winning track, to have that really good feel going into the playoffs? I'd like to compare it to last year. John, they lost 2 of their last 3 games.
Yeah.
They didn't get a win to end the season until the Giants came to town, and they certainly.
And by the way, they played poorly in that game. I mean, I think people overstated the threat because the final score was close, but the Giants were playing their JV. They did not exactly look like world beaters.
Right, but the Giants also scored late.
Yeah,
you didn't really think the Giants had any.
No, I'm the one who said they had no shot of winning that game at all points. But There's a bunch of people. It was 22-16, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it was sort of a nonsense
It
game.
was a
And
nothing burger is what that game
yeah,
was.
and they proved it when the Giants came here for the playoffs, and it was 38-7. But remember, at the time, Jalen Hurts was out. He had a shoulder injury that looked pretty significant, and he didn't look like himself. So there was a little bit of hemming and hawing. That in hindsight, as you mentioned, is a nothing burger. But yeah, they didn't look good. People forget now because they won the Super Bowl. So they looked terrible down the stretch of that season after Carson Wentz got hurt. You know, they had a couple games to the point where Doug Peterson said, all right, we got to scrap what we're doing. John DiFilippo, Frank Reich, figure out what Nick Foles does well. Let's ship this entire thing. People kind of forget those struggles at the end of the regular season.
And let me say this about yesterday's two coordinator gatherings. So you guys got your first chance to talk to the coordinators. Sean Desai seems like a likable guy. He said all the right things. He had all the right notes. He sucked up to the Philadelphia fan base the best way he possibly could. Good on him. We'll see what he does. The new offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson, a little more reserved. He never laughed. At least Desai laughed. Somebody said something, I forget what it was, that he actually laughed out loud, which at least I like to see. Much more buttoned up was Brian Johnson. But the one thing that he said that I liked, you just made reference to it, is he's not going to try and put a square peg in a round hole. Oh, it was about the running backs. He was asked about how are you going to use Rashad Penny, how you use the DeAndre Swift. He said, listen, they bring different things to the table, gives us great flexibility at the running back position because they are different type players, and we're going to get them to do what they do well and make it work for our offense. That's one of my biggest knocks on coaches, and head coaches certainly, but head coaches who are calling plays in football are a bigger contributor to it. You've got your philosophy, and your philosophy is the way that you're going to do things, and you're going to take guys who might not necessarily be strong at what you would hope would be the best case scenario in their positions and you're going to just take the results as they come rather than try and tinker with your system to get the most out of players and what their strengths are. I really like the fact that Johnson went there yesterday and said, I'm not a guy who's going to put a round peg in a square hole. We're going to figure out what our guys do well. We're going to mesh that with our philosophies and our systems and the like. And I think that's the best way to coach. So I was really glad to hear that out of him.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the best way to coach. I agree with you that some people don't do it, but everybody says they're going to do it. So, that's something you always say. Everybody says, and then they don't do it, and they fall back into their crutch of their philosophy of their scheme. The Eagles have shown pretty consistently, especially offensively. Look, a lot of people think the defense changed from year one to year two. It didn't. They just got better players, they were able to play what they wanted to play more. So things shifted from, you mentioned all the 50 fronts. They used it more because they had better players to utilize it. Whereas the year prior, they had Jannard Avery and Javon Hargrave trying to play nose tackle. Well, yeah, good luck with that. You can't play as much 50. So the defensive scheme didn't change. The philosophy didn't change. The talent level changed. The offense, they were a completely different offense at the beginning of Nick Sirianni's first season. They were trying to throw the ball, 11 personnel, more like what Indianapolis did. And then they said, all right, this is not working. Jalen Hurts was still a developing quarterback. They felt they put too much on his plate too soon. They scaled it back into more of the RPO zone read stuff, and everything took off. I give them tons of credit for that. A lot of people don't do that. They say they'll do it, but they don't do it.
Yep.
So I think Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit, and Brian Johnson's a part of it. I believe him when he says that, but everybody says it. I mean, that's one of those things. And
until
not
he
everybody
actually
does
it. Maybe this is my naivete, but until when someone hasn't been given the chance to prove that they're going to do something or not do something, I'm going to take them at their word. Now, if you go out there and you don't get it done, and or you basically come out and lie to us, oh, then I'm going to beat the snot out of you. I'm going to hit you over the head. But this is the first chance we've had to hear him talk about how he will do play calling. And if he says he's going to be open-minded and tap into the skill sets that his players have and adjust the system, and you never get away from your core values, but there's always flexibility to be had. I was glad he said what he did. Now I hope that it actually plays that way once the season starts. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. You got Mac here on Birds 365. Our pal, Mr. Day After. He joined us most Mondays during the season, and we figured this was a day after the schedule.
Post-game day schedule.
Chris Franklin from NJ.com up to join us here on Birds 365. He's next.